What's up everyone, it's Kelly and today I've got another swatch review for you. So today we are talking about the Cuccio Karaoke collection for summer 2022. We've got 8 new polishes, mostly neons, mostly cream finishes. So if you haven't heard of Cuccio before, they are a salon nail polish brand that is vegan, meaning they do not use any animal-derived ingredients. They are cruelty-free, meaning they do not test their products on animals. And they are 10-free, meaning they are free of 10 of the potentially harmful ingredients that are often found in nail polish. They somewhat recently changed their brush from a regular wide flat brush to a wide flat brush that has a rounded tip. It's a little bit thinner in terms of the amount of bristles, but it does make application super easy. So I was really excited when I made the switch over because, as you probably know, I love the Cuccio base coat. But yeah, I was really excited when I saw this collection because I love the neons. I think the colors are so bright and gorgeous and they looked really opaque, but I don't know how I feel about them. So let me show you the swatches, then we'll talk a little bit more about my thoughts, availability, and pricing. So roll the footage. So as with all of my swatch and review videos, I am using base coat underneath all of my swatches just to protect my natural nail and prevent any stains. Of course, I am using the Cuccio base coat here, so I'll link it below. So starting off with this shade Duet, I would say this is the only non-neon cream finish in the collection, but it's a really beautiful orchid kind of purple cream. It definitely has a little bit of a pinkiness to it. It's got a slight dustiness, but I think that might just be compared to the neons because it's still a pretty bright shade. And this one has a good formula. This is exactly what I expect from Cuccio. It's a nice thin formula, but it's opaque in 2 coats, and it was honestly almost opaque in that first coat, and it does self-level out really nicely. Moving on, we have Karaoke Party, and this one is a neon Barbie pink cream shade. So it's got a little bit of that almost like salmon-y undertone to it, but it's still a nice cooler tone, and I was able to get full coverage in 2 coats. Again, this formula felt great. This was a promising start to the collection. I figured all of them would be like this, and I was pretty impressed. One thing to note that I find is pretty common when it comes to neon formulas is it did dry down to that semi-matte finish, but this one actually wasn't even that matte, so another pretty good shade. No complaints here. Then we have the shade Encore, and this one's a really bright shade. It's somewhere between a red and an orange, but it's just so vibrant and incredibly opaque. You can see it actually ended up giving me full coverage in that first coat, and again, it was a really nice formula, pretty self-leveling. The only difficulty I had with this one is I had a slightly wonky brush, but if that ever happens, you can always reach out to the brand. Usually they will send out a replacement, but I did think it was interesting that this one ended up having a little bit of that matte finish, and I noticed once it dried down, you could see a tiny bit of that visible nail line, but it almost felt like one of those red jellies, so I didn't mind that at all. It was still very self-leveling. So here is when I started to find myself struggling a little bit with the polishes. We have this shade Hit the High Notes, and this one is what I would consider a neon salmon polish. It's got this very peachy oranginess to it, but there's definitely a little bit of a pinkiness as well, and it ended up giving me full coverage in 2 coats, but I noticed that it was not self-leveling. So once it dried out, it looked like, especially around the cuticle area, that there were some areas that just looked patchy, even though they weren't. It was just not even across the nails, so the shadows were making it look less opaque. Then we had the shade Name That Tune, and this one is almost like a whiter version of Hit the High Notes, so it's still that peachy neon color, but it has a little bit of like a white tone to it, so it looks a lot lighter, almost like a pastel neon. And this one, again, I was noticing it was just not self-leveling, so I thought it was pretty good coverage in 2 coats, but then once I looked at it, I was like, wait, this is still a little patchy, so I ended up going in with a 3rd coat. I tried to be really careful with my application just to make it really smooth, but another thing about neons is they tend to dry pretty quickly, so if they're not self-leveling, they're pretty hard to work with. And I noticed in 3 coats, again, it felt like it was fully opaque, but because of that lumpiness, it just looked like there were some shadowed areas and areas that looked patchy on the nail. Next up, we have the shade KJ on the Mic, and this one is such a vibrant orangey yellow neon. This literally looks like Kraft mac and cheese. I noticed in the first coat it wasn't looking as neon as it did in the bottle, but it started to show a little bit more of that neon coloring as I made it more opaque. But again, I noticed I was having the same problem. This one just was not giving me the opacity, so So in the third coat, I was almost there, but I still felt like there was just some lumpiness to it because it wasn't self-leveling. It was giving me those shadowed areas, and you can really see, especially around the cuticle area, that it just looks super patchy. You can also see a little bit of my visible nail line. I wouldn't mind that if it wasn't patchy, but it was patchy on top of that, so not a huge fan. Next up, we have the shade Girls Night Out, and let me tell you, this polish truly broke my heart. It is the most stunning lime green neon cream ever. It looked so vibrant and beautiful in the bottle. It has a little tiny bit of this like bluish undertone, and it just looks so perfect. But as soon as I started applying it, I was like, this is never going to get opaque. It seemed like it was, like it almost has that sort of whitish base going on in there that it seems like it would give that full opacity. But even after 3 coats, it just looked super patchy, especially once it dried out. So I ended up doing a 4th coat. I think I probably hit that full opacity in the 4th coat, but 4 coats for a cream finish just does not seem worth it to me at all. And even then, I still noticed there were some areas around the cuticle that just looked a little bit lumpy and patchy. So I was so sad about this one. This is the color that I was the most excited about when I saw it in the bottle, but it ended up being a disappointment. And here is the final shade in the collection. It's called Liquid Courage, and I absolutely love when brands pair nudes and neons. This one is a sheer milky beige nude color that has these really beautiful iridescent flecks in it that shine a little bit gold, and they look a little purpley actually when they're not hit by the light. But this was another one that just felt really patchy. So you could see the more coats I was applying, the more I tried to kind of smooth it out. But even in 3 coats, it just wasn't totally even across the nails. It reminded me a little bit of that ILNP collection that I reviewed that just looked so beautiful in the bottle, but it just did not translate well on the nail because of the patchiness. So here are all of the polishes together, and looking at them, I think it's such a beautiful color story, and I found myself really happy with the beginning of the collection. I think that neon pink was definitely the best in terms of neon formula. Of course, that reddish orange shade was the most opaque and definitely the easiest to work with, but I feel like having 5 polishes that just did not give me the right opacity or look on the nail really soured my opinion of the collection. But again, just kind of trying to think of them individually. The first 3 shades I really didn't mind, but now I'm looking at them with a little bit more of a critical eye and wondering if maybe they are also not as great. I don't know. I'm so conflicted. So yeah, those are the polishes. Overall, here are my thoughts. Thought number 1, the polishes are in fact gorgeous colors. I think they're super bright. I think they're super vibrant. They're really perfect for summer. Thought number 2, they are definitely not self-leveling. So you need a top coat to smooth everything out, which in itself isn't a problem because I always recommend using top coat, especially when you're working with neons. They tend to chip a little bit faster. So I always think you should use a top coat anyway, but I do think that makes these polishes a little bit less beginner friendly. If you have a hard time evening out your nails and you really rely on self-leveling polishes that sort of smooth out as they dry, this might not be a good collection for you because these are just not very self-leveling. I noticed that they were drying pretty quickly as I was painting, so I couldn't even really go back to any areas that had a little bit more polish on them to try to smooth it out myself. It was just a little bit tricky. And thought number 3, the opacity of these was pretty confusing. Some of them were opaque, but they still didn't even really look opaque because of that lumpiness where you don't have the self-levelingness of the polish. So I wasn't thrilled with that, but I also noticed that some of them, even though they looked really opaque, they were still kind of patchy after 3 coats. On the one hand, it is pretty hard to get neons right, and I know a lot of brands have tried and failed at it. I have experienced good neons from Cuccio, specifically last year. They had a bunch of good ones. So I had pretty high expectations for these, and I just don't think they met those expectations. As far as what I would consider like a really good neon formula, I'm looking at polishes like the Cirque Vice collection. Those are just really nice self-leveling smooth formulas that reach opacity fairly quickly. I mean, on the one hand, I can see because it's very inexpensive, especially compared to these higher end indie brands that have the more opaque formulas, that it might be worth grabbing them. Overall, I think I'm just really conflicted about this collection. There are a few that I really enjoyed, and the colors I just think are really stunning, especially that green I think is so beautiful. I just don't know that I would recommend this collection to everyone. I think that this is a collection that you have to very specifically be wanting those colors and not mind the issues with the formula. But that being said, I still think I'm going to wear these, and I feel like I'm going to be reaching for them a lot for nail art specifically, just because I don't need my nail art to be self-leveling, and I think they're pretty opaque to work with when you're talking about nail art. Maybe I should try stamping them. I feel like they might be good for stamping because they look opaque. They're just not covering up my visible nail line. So these polishes are 13 milliliters. Like I said, they have that wide flat brush now that has the rounded tip, and that is also in their base and top coat. So if you are a big fan of the Cuccio base and top coat like I am, I definitely recommend switching over because I do prefer this new brush. And all of these colors retail for $6.95 on HP Beauty Bar, which is where I get them. And you can also use the discount code KELLI to get 22% off your order there. So I'm gonna link that down in the description. You can check that out if you're interested. And like I said a few times, I am a huge fan of the Cuccio base and top coat, so I do recommend those. And I have had really good previous experiences with Cuccio. I'm not sure if it's just this formula, but I also feel like I don't remember loving their spring collection either. So definitely been a little iffy on Cuccio recently. But yeah, that's it. I would love to hear from you guys. What do you think of these polishes? Do you see yourself wearing this type of formula? If you enjoy my swatch and review videos, please give this one a thumbs up. It lets me know I'm doing a good job. And if you're not already subscribed to my channel, please consider subscribing. I put out new videos every Tuesday, Friday, and Sunday. And of course, a huge shout out to my Cosmic Admirals on Patreon, Amanda M, Rocketman's daughter, and Paula. I really appreciate your support, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye. Today's fun fact question comes from Patreon supporter Brooke B, and Brooke B wants to know, tour of the shoe collection? And Brooke also says maybe this would be better suited for the vlog channel. So yes, I don't know if this is weird, but I really want to do a video where I just show you my whole shoe collection. It's definitely going to go on my vlog channel, which is my second channel where I show more like behind the scenes stuff. But I have an immensely large collection of sneakers and combat boots and different types of shoes, and I've always thought it would be so cool to just like go through and try on every pair and see what I have, and then maybe even do like a huge collage like I do with my swatches. And I feel like that would be so cool to see. I'm very proud of my shoe collection. I think they're super fun. I'm a big fan of cool shoes. Ryan also happens to be a big fan of cool shoes. We actually have a whole sneaker wall in our bedroom, so I just feel like that would be a really cool video, but I don't know if that would be super weird to do. But I'm still planning on doing it because I think it would be a fun time. So if you're not subscribed to that channel, definitely go subscribe. I have been vlogging a lot more recently on there, and I'm planning on vlogging hopefully weekly, so we'll see if I can do it. All right, that's it. I'll see you all in my next video. Bye.